Alright, hi, this is Barlow. I'm just doing a quick video on my updated tier list for February 2020. I'm probably just gonna put this as March because March is right around the corner. Um, so I said I was gonna go through every character, but to save time, I'm gonna do it as brief as possible. I'll probably spend more time talking about the ones that have moved from my last one, and why my perspective has changed or what happened. So new in Lambda, I kill them if I get in, and their neutral's not particularly hard. At least it's not very hard to regen wolf meter against them in neutral, so you're not really pressured. Without a lot of chip damage, they're not particularly threatening, so I don't know, it's really straightforward. I just feel like there's nothing that those characters do that outweigh the fact that they just don't really get out once I corner them. Kind of a similar thing with Noelle. She has a couple more options in neutral, but ultimately, this character just can't deal with meaty Wolf 5C. It baits her super, it baits all her wake up drive bullshit. Like, there's nothing that she can do about Valk once he's in. She can be pretty annoying with her different momentum stalls, though. And she does deal, not a lot of damage, but enough damage that I don't really like getting hit by her. So she can be annoying, but I would say overall that's a heavy Valk advantage. Kind of a similar deal with Kokonoe. It's really hard for Kokonoe to set up her screen pollution against Valk. Like, as soon as you put down a lightning trap, Valk can whiff punish you. You can do things like, if she does try to put the lightning trap down and you block, you can 2-3-6-A through her in wolf form, be pretty safe for the most part. 6D goes over 3C, so her main poke's not good. Her 6A is not super good for dealing with Valk. The saving grace she has in neutral, though, is that her jump A is a very, very good normal. So is jump B. She has really active jump normals for dealing with Wolf, like using Geshwin to go back. That's really good. And she can kind of gorilla out with Bunker on the ground, but not really enough to threaten the ground space. And I don't think her offense is like particularly different against Valkenhayn. I don't think her defensive options particularly help, especially since we have safe ways to deal with Wake Up Super Ball. So yeah, those are the four I put in heavy advantage. I certainly think I could still lose to all these characters, but those are my thoughts. Light advantage. Makoto, she RPSs pretty well. I would still say Valk has a pretty solid advantage in neutral. But she can RPS decently well. But the thing about having good RPS versus Valk is there has to be some kind of reason for me to not want to disengage from it. And I don't think Makoto quite has the neutral tools to make disengaging a bad choice, even if I feel like the risk-reward doesn't favor me. And I still feel like most of the time it does favor Valk. Haas I'd put as a light advantage, just because this character dies once you corner him, that's really it. He can be annoying in neutral for sure. I think he actually does force a decent amount of wolf meter spin, but I don't think his offense is that threatening against Valk, and Valk actually can deal with stuff like the stance overhead. If you try to do that, that could be 6-8 on reaction, in my opinion. He doesn't really have a strong answer to deal with, like, instant block wolf 4D out. So, I don't know, I just think the main deciding factor is that this character dies if I corner him. Susanoo actually keeps up okay with Valk in neutral. I would say it's probably a slight advantage in Valk's favor. I feel like Valk can play a very whiff punish oriented game without, like, really having to spend too much wolf meter. Jump A and Jump C are definitely good tools, and the thing about Susanoo is that I would say this is more on the unstable side, because once he unlocks certain specials, the neutral does get a lot scarier. You do have to look out for Grand Viper just because it's big and active, and as soon as you're threatening that big ground space against Valk, the matchup does become a little bit tougher. No real good defensive options. Both the supers can be baited with 7D or 4D in reaction to Whiff Punish. The DP he has is pretty good. It can be OS'd because it's too slow. But if Susanoo unlocks DP first, it is a little bit scarier. There are gaps he can punish. Terumi. It's pretty fast. His neutral's not terrible against Valk. He has strong air-to-airs. Jump D is really great for dealing with Wolf 5B. You do have to pay attention to 6C on the ground when he has 50 meter, so he can lock out that space pretty well. And he hits hard, so the matchup can be a little unstable, but overall, I don't think this character... Like this matchup, to me, has more to do with Terumi's threat level as a character is really conditional, and less to do with how the matchup specifically plays out. Carl. Carl vs. Valk is basically whoever gets cornered first is probably going to die unless you burst or someone makes a mistake. I think Valk has like a very slight advantage in neutral. He has great tools for poking the doll. Maneuvers around stuff like Volante and Fukuo, no problem. He can punish actually the doll pretty well with human normals as well. He's pretty good pokes against that. The main thing is that this matchup is so slow-paced, and I feel like that benefits Valk a little bit more just because you have more time to regen Wolf Meter. And then there's other little interactions that I like. You know, like, Wolf 5C can hit both the doll and Carl simultaneously, so that's really nice to have. You can straight up just go through the doll with Beast Cannon. It can be kind of hard for Carl to find the right positioning, and I don't think Volante really does enough for it to be a huge detriment in the matchup, although you do obviously have to look for it. Tau Kaka. This character drains the shit out of Valk's Wolf Meter in neutral. It can be a little scary to do that, but she doesn't hit super hard. She doesn't have great defensive options. She dies once I corner her. It's mostly just if you can deal with Tau in neutral, which it's not awful for Valk. It's a little tricky at times, but it's not really that bad. Celica. Man, Celica I think would actually be harder for Valk if she did a little more damage, but she just doesn't hit hard enough to be that big threat. She has a couple good tools in neutral, like she has strong poke, she has great air-to-airs, her dive kicks can definitely keep me from just Wolf 5 being her out of everything. She does have okay defensive options, although Space Wolf 5C does deal with the majority of them. I don't know, I admit that I haven't played this matchup a ton, but this is just my general feeling. It could be I just haven't played a Celica who does super good and takes advantage of those things, I don't know. Arcune. One of my most played matchups. I think Valk has a pretty decent advantage in neutral. Obviously, if Arcune curses me, I'm in trouble. Obviously, if I corner him, he's in trouble. The one thing is that the RPS can be a little scary against him just because the super is such a big reward on hit, but outside of that, I think Valk is pretty cleanly at an advantage against Arcune. Even. So you'll see that I've broken even into 2 tiers, stable and unstable. Basically, kind of talking about the consistency. Like, essentially, if I feel a matchup is more stable, then I can kind of expect consistent senses of interactions and outcomes, depending on like how the player versus player interactions work. When it's unstable, it can be like I can probably have an advantage, but like if I get hit once, I'm in this really bad situation, or if I make a mistake, or like these interactions in RPS don't work out in my favor very often, so that makes them less stable overall. 9. Super even. Charlie and I go back and forth on this, but I think it's like maybe a slight 9 favor, if at all. But I don't know. I don't think it's particularly awful. He whiff punishes her well. Like, as soon as 9 dashes, he can pretty much air-to-air her with Wolf Jump A guaranteed. She doesn't have a really good way to threaten Wolf Meter usage until she gets certain spells. And Val can get out of her mid-screen options pretty well. Like, anytime I see Kunzite, that's a free 4D. So I can get out of that super easy. Sturmwolf can punish a lot of the her block string and the spell stuff because it's so fast and has so much horizontal reach. OS is the DP fine. The one thing that 9 has that's kind of interesting is 214B comes out fast enough that she can actually punish the Wolf 5C 60 Wolf Jump A gap, but I'm kind of finding as the character develops more, that's a less and less relevant thing to have. S. So Japan thinks that this matchup is like unwinnable for Valk. I've played this one a lot. I think it's about even. I'd maybe give it like a slight S favor if I had to go one way. I think she does do really well in neutral. Obviously, Jump BB, 5C, the crests, fireballs do good work. But it's not really that different from any other matchup outside of those specific neutral tools. And I don't even think those are so commanding that it really dictates the pace of the matchup. On defense, it's pretty average. She has a DP that you can kind of only OS in certain situations. Her damage isn't anything to write home about, which I think helps out a bit. Valk has like some nice callouts, like if you see her commit to a 2D or a 214B, 6A is great. Sturmwolf is really good at dealing with her pressure. He has pretty solid OD punishes for the stuff that's unsafe. So I don't know, like, people go a lot about this matchup. I just happen to have the perspective that it feels okay to me. Again, I think I'd maybe give it a slight edge to S if I had to pick one, just because I think in those 3 states of the game, neutral offense defense, she has a little more on the side of neutral, but that's it. Jubei. I don't talk about this character a lot. I admit that I don't really have as much experience in this matchup at a high level as I'd like. I've played Elion in tournament a couple times, or sorry, one time, but I've played him in casuals a few times. I don't know. I mean, Jubei has nice air-to-airs. He has a lot of stuff with a lot of active frames. That's always a little troubling for Wolf. Install, obviously, locks out a lot of space since I can't block at Wolf form. But he does die if I get him in the corner. I also pretty much die if he gets me in the corner. And he has low health, and the damage is not super huge on his part, so that always helps. So I just think that that's about even. That's a much more rough one, because I haven't played it enough. Ibiki, this is even. I don't have a lot to say. Hibiki is really explosive sometimes. He has nice ways to stall his air momentum. He's good air-to-airs. He can be kind of annoying on the ground. I don't know, I would say everything that's hard about Hibiki for Valk is just kind of annoying and not, like, ridiculous, so that's why he is where he is. Ragna. This is even. He got a little better for him in CF2, like I mentioned, just because now he gets a meterless combo off of Raw Nightmare Edge, so that adds a little something to the anti-air RPS. Outside of that, it's really standard. I've played this matchup with Beta Dude a ton, so I don't know. Jin. Kind of similar to Ragna. The only thing that's different is that there's a couple wake-up situations where the RPS really favors Jin, just because of his raw OD damage, the DDP being a little bit tricky to OS at times and in certain situations, but outside of that, it's really standard. Platinum entirely depends on the item that she has. I'd actually maybe move that one to unstable, just because I don't think Platinum is a particularly huge threat to Valk unless she has certain items, but if she gets, like, Presence, Cat Hammer, Halo, she controls the neutral a little bit more. Actually, it's, like, pretty heavily in her favor. So yeah, same ol'. Relius. I play this matchup with Stein all the time. Fought Beautiful Dude in tournament, fought Mioro here and there. Yeah, this feels pretty even. It's kind of a red light, green light with our resource management gauges. Relius is not really great defensive options against Valk. You can be kind of gimmicky with, you know, if you layer in, like, Backdash with Twirl and his Wake Up Gear Super. I don't know. There's, like, stuff he can do, but it's not particularly good. I'd just say this is about even. He can cover the ground spells well with Wheel. He installs air momentum. He has a really good air-to-air in the form of Jump A. He's a really good ground game against Wolf. I don't know, just even. I hit this character most of the time he does. Amane. So, an interesting matchup because I do think Valk edges it out for the most part, but Amane's neutral is actually really scary for Valk. Like, Jump 2D is really annoying to deal with, Gust is really annoying to deal with, 5B and Jump B are such good normals to have. His 6A I think is frame 4, so you can IB out of the Wolf 5C 6D Wolf Jump A gap. I definitely think if nothing else, Amane forces Wolf meter usage in neutral, but I think Valk has an advantage everywhere else. Azrael. Valk kind of shits on this character on offense for the most part. Azrael doesn't RPS super well. In neutral, it's definitely Valk favor just because you can play really reactive and whiff punishy, but as soon as you're low on wolf meter, this matchup is like a total nightmare. Obviously, Azrael hits hard. He can be really scary when he gets you cornered. He has like some pretty decent options for calling out wolf ground movement. So yeah, I think it just all kind of adds up to being even. I've played like every NA Azrael in tournament. I don't think I've lost this character in tournament in like a serious setting in a really long time, so I have a lot of experience here. Bang. Bang has actually really good neutral tools against Valk. Nails obviously cover a lot of space. He has 2 air dashes. He forces a little bit of wolf meter usage in neutral. He has some stuff that he can YOLO with in order to cover the ground space, but he's also very whiff punishable. He hits hard, and he has okay defensive RPS options. But his offense isn't really anything to write home about against Valk. I do think that he has trouble pinning Valk down, although I think he does, in a way, stop Valk's natural rushdown game plan. I've played this matchup a lot as well with pretty much every NA Bang. Bullet. You might be surprised to see this. Bullet is just very explosive. Jump D is a very good tool against Valk. It's not easy for her to build heat, but Valk pretty much dies if this character gets going, which I know is pretty universal across her matchups, but I think Jump D is just like such an important tool that it sort of adds up to being even. I'm still learning this matchup, to be honest, so I'm not super sure on it just yet. But I know it's not bad for her. Like there's certainly worse matchups for Bullet out there, and when I think about matchups that are really like quote unquote easy for Valk, she is not a character that comes up. So this is where she is tentatively. Kagura has moved a little bit from my last tier list, or sorry, matchup chart. The only reason is because I just kind of like had more experience against good Kaguras. I played Haru at Anime Ascension, and that was like a really interesting experience because he's far and away the strongest Kagura that I've fought. And yeah, I mean, Kagura has some okay tools for this matchup. I mean, B Flash Kick is always really good to have against Wolf because so many things are flagged as head. He can control the ground space a decent amount with, you know, Flash Kicks. He can pollute the neutral a bit. I mean, obviously I have to deal with Flash Kick RPS all the time. There's no real clean OS for dealing with those, so I do have to play the RPS against him a bit. I don't know. It's interesting because I do think Valk has a bit of an advantage in neutral just because of his whiff punish ability. It's a little bit like Azrael in the sense where if I run out of Wolf Meter, it's basically really, really bad for me. But the one thing that kind of keeps me from just saying that this is Valk favor now is Kagura's jump speed trades favorably for him against Wolf 5B, which is not true for a lot of aerial attacks. That actually changes a lot of stuff about the neutral. It means I'm committing to airs a lot more. It means I'm spending a little more Wolf Meter. And since I need Wolf Meter to whiff punish stuff like 2C, that can be a little bit detrimental. He actually has a pretty nice jump in with jump B and a nice air to air with jump A. That always helps. So yeah, I don't know. I think this adds up to being about even. I go back and forth on it though. Like I could wake up one day and feel like this is even. I could wake up the next day and feel like Valk has a pretty clean advantage. One of my most played matchups for sure in tournament. Hager. Valk shits on this character in neutral, and then he gets Spark Bolt, and then he doesn't. And then he shits on this character on offense, and then he gets 50 meter, and then he doesn't. It gets really scary, so yeah, Tager is like a pretty it's pretty clean for Valk, but then there's just like two things that could happen that just completely decimate him. I've actually started playing this character in order to understand how to deal with him a little bit better, so I'm gonna get back to you on that, but for now I would say this is about even. I know in Japan they think roughly the same. Hakumen. This is Casino Night Zone. It's a dice roll. You knock down Hakumen, depending on his resources. The risk-reward for doing offense may or may not be in your favor, so you play neutral again. Which favors Valk, but it gets harder as the match goes on, because he gets more donuts in order to do the wilder things in neutral, like Yanagi, which I have to be on the lookout for. Got some nice pokes. They're also a little whiff punishable. I think this just adds up to being even. I have so much experience against Hakumen God. I think at the time he played, Red Blade had like the best defense against Hakumen and the United States. The best defense against Valkus Hakumen, like the United States. This character can be pretty tricky. But I think it ends up being even. It's very explosive. Light disadvantage. Izanami, I used to kind of be on the camp that this was more even. I'm starting to understand a little more why the JP Valks think this matchup is really hard. I think she forces Wolf Meter usage really well. Although the one tool that I just have a really hard time dealing with right now is probably Skull. There are ways around it. You can kind of maneuver around it with cross-unders. You can hit her with Wolf 236B, and there's only so many heights she can be at with the float, so it is doable. The only reason why I think this might be slightly in her favor is because she forces some Wolf Meter usage, and your windows to attack her between bits when they're thrown out is a little small. That's really it, though. I think Valk does fine against her. Naoto. Character hits like a truck. RPS is pretty well. Covers the ground space really, really well. There are commitments for him, but he can do it. And I just think, like, I don't know. There's no one particular stage of the game where it feels like Naoto just destroys Valk. It's more like everything feels a little bit favored for him across the board. Which is, I don't know. That's pretty much it. Like, a lot of this just comes down to damage, too. Like, I wouldn't mind if Naoto didn't hit as hard, but since he hits pretty hard, you know, it's just like having a slight advantage in some of these interactions can add up pretty quickly. But I'm not really sure about this one still, despite having a pretty decent amount of Naoto experience. Izuyoi. I've played this. This is like one of my most played matchups. I actually haven't played it in a while because I don't know why I haven't played it in a while. The only thing that makes this hard is that Izuyoi doesn't require a resource to move in gain art mode, so she kind of outmaneuvers Valk and forces Wolf Meter drain with gain art with Starks. I think Valk plays great versus normal mode neutral. Her defensive options are not super scary against him because her DP is crazy easy to OS. She doesn't have all that good of like a low commit anti-air except for jump A, which is something you can definitely play around, and that really helps a lot. Like if you can play in spaces that force her to use Slash, then you're at a crazy disadvantage. She like cannot throw a fireball in normal mode either. If she does that, like you're just gonna jump in and run over her. If she does air fireball, run straight under her and air to air her, all sorts of stuff. I think Valk does fine. I just think Izuyoi drains his resources a bit, and she does have some explosive damage output. Mai covers the ground space well, covers the airspace well, very hard to anti-air, hits pretty hard, has some great options for just chasing Wolf. Like it's really hard to 7D against her because you can just get clipped by a spear. But overall, I mean, you still kind of kill her if she gets in. You do have to deal with Wake Up Flip RPS a bit just because most of Wolf's attacks are, most of Wolf's attacks are flagged as foot. It's pretty straightforward though. Okay. Rachel. Rachel... So I've gone from thinking this matchup is really, really hard for Valk to thinking it's just pretty hard for Valk. Obviously the neutral is in Rachel's favor. Obviously she kills me if she gets in for the most part. I mean, that's kind of true both ways. The saving grace here, though, is that Rachel does not have a good tool for dealing with Valk. She's got to take risks with 2C. She's got to commit to the counter assault. She's got to commit to OD RPS, which she has just okay things of. So, like, once I hit Rachel, it's not too hard to stall Wolf Meter against her on offense, and it's not too hard to keep the pressure going against her. That's the thing that prevents this from being the tier below where Lychee is. But yeah, I've played this matchup a shit ton. I feel like I have a good understanding of the neutral. It's definitely not easy for Valk, but I don't think it's as bad as I thought. Moo pollutes the screen. Big normals, really strong air-to-airs, and air-to-grounds for that matter. Hard to anti-air this character, hard to get in, forced to use Wolf Meter usage in neutral. Her offense isn't, like, crazy scary, obviously, but she ends up winning neutral a good majority of the time, and I do think this matchup can be hard. I will say I'm not finalized on this placement of her, because I'll admit that I don't have a ton of experience. I used to play Arc Lancer a lot back in the day, but I don't have a ton of Moo experience nowadays. Tsubaki. This one's probably moved the most, because I would have put it as a stable, even matchup in the past. I played against Elyon Tsubaki. First of all, probably the far and away, like, the strongest Tsubaki I've fought in a really long time. And one thing I didn't realize is that Tsubaki actually can play the neutral very, very well. It was obviously that way when she had stocks and she could kind of gorilla out here and there. But I've noticed that Jump B is a really great air-to-air. It can be a little tricky to anti-air her sometimes. She has much stronger ground pokes than I thought. She's fairly mobile. You know, obviously if she gets meter, I have to think about bananas, which kind of forces me to lose neutral or spend Wolf Meter to evade them, which actually is an option Valk has, other characters don't. Her damage outputted with the optimal stuff can definitely hurt. And she RPS as well, because she has a good DP that's very... I don't know if there's a working OS for it right now. I have to look at that again, but a DP that's pretty rough to deal with, and, you know, she can make it not safe in this version, but pretty much harder to punish, and so there's a lot of RPS there. And it just gets kind of annoying all around. And I think in this matchup, like, the main difference compared to before, like, I knew that the RPS was good before, but I didn't realize that she could play around his neutral so well. This is not a final placement for her. Like, this is one I'm less confident in, only because I don't get a lot of experience against Tsubaki at that level. Especially since IVZ moved out of New York. I have not gotten strong high-level Tsubaki experience in a while. But I can definitely see more why Japan doesn't really care for this matchup, and I'm really surprised that she's moved this much. Lychee. I've talked about this millions of times. She's got an advantage every state of the game. The saving grace here is that the mid-range is really good for Valk. If I catch her in between, like, if she's staffless and I've already dealt with a staff, then, like, I can chase down this character pretty okay. She forces Wolf Meter in neutral. She's got great defensive RPS. Great OD RPS, which actually comes into play a lot. She hits really hard. Her offense is strong. It's a little tricky for Valk to escape, although he does have some decent callouts with OD and Sturm. I just want to reiterate that just because I say this is a very heavy disadvantage matchup, Valk can definitely win this in a 2 out of 3. Like, I don't think any matchup in this game is, like, impossible for Valk to play and win multiple times against in tournament. I just, like, these are all kind of relative to each other. Like, I think Lychee is the hardest character for Valk to fight, and the easiest is probably, like, Lambda or Noelle. Yeah, so those are my matchup thoughts. Thanks for watching. Feel free to let me know if you really disagree with me in the comments or whatever. But yeah, I'm just giving out my thoughts. So there you go.